Well, hello, my name is Chris Oppenheimer, and this is Real, Raw, and Authentic, and this is actually volume number 4. And so today, I just wanted to share a little bit about why I even started Real, Raw, and Authentic. It's because I feel like as a 51-year-old man, I've seen and heard a lot of things, and I have a lot of great people in my life, and I want to get to the point where people can be themselves and share their message and their story without feeling like they're being judged, criticized, less than, all these things that we criticize ourselves for. I want to create a space where people can be themselves, be comfortable, and share their story, being real, raw, and authentic. And today I have with me one of my good friends, Melissa Redfern. She lives here in San Antonio now, but Melissa, thank you for being here. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I appreciate that.
Well, Melissa and I met several years ago, and Melissa is an amputee, and she has one leg. And when I first met her, somebody had told me that she would be a great house sitter for me when I go out of town and travel. And I have a pit bull and a boxer, and my first instincts were they were rescues, and the boxer is scared to death of anybody holding anything that's a stick. And Melissa, you have two. You have two crutches that you walk around on.
Yes.
And that's my first question to you. You know, you're an amputee. You have one leg, but you've never chosen to have artificial limbs. You choose the crutches. And when I talk to people, I always say she gets around better on 2 crutches than some people do on 2 legs. And that's the truth, you know?
Right.
So I commend you, Melissa, but let's go back and just share what happened. How did this happen? Because you weren't born with 3 limbs. You were born with 4, just like I was, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So what happened?
At the age of 13, I was diagnosed with a very rare type of cancer. When I went in to have surgery, the tumor had grown around my blood vessels. And in order for me to live, and for it not to spread, they went ahead and amputated my leg. And then 2 years later, it did spread to the lower left lobe of my lung. So that's when I was put on chemotherapy. So most of my teenage years were spent trying to save my life.
Wow.
This year will be 49 years.
49 years cancer-free. Or since that happened? Or
Since that happened. And then cancer-free would be like 47 years.
47 years cancer-free. And I know you're proactive and you always try to do the right things to make sure that you take care of your health. And
oh, yes. Very much so.
and you know, and I commend you on that. And, you know, so Melissa, what was that journey? Because at 13 years old, most kids are in their prime.
Yes. And you're worried about pimples.
Yeah,
girls especially.
Yeah, you're worried about pimples. And here you are, you missed a limb. What was that like? Take me there. And what did that transpire into for several years? Because you went into some dark places, much just like I did, but for totally different reasons. Share what that was like.
Oh, yeah. At 13, I didn't know that I was going to come out with one leg. When I went into surgery, all they did was measure me for a support hose because it was up so high that I didn't know. They thought my leg would swell. So when I came out of surgery, that's when I knew that I didn't have a leg.
What was that feeling like?
That was horrible. It was really, really horrible because I was having phantom pains.
So you were having phantom pains.
Yes.
And then, so you experienced that. You're a teenager. What was that like with your friends? Did you lose friends? Did you gain friends?
Well, actually,
because we hear about bullying in school. We hear about that kind of stuff nowadays. We're talking 40 years ago before was bullying was even bullying, right?
Right.
Back when I was bullied as the gay kid, you know, and I didn't even know I was until 42.
Exactly.
But what was that like?
Well, to tell you the truth, what happened was my dad gave me a choice. Either we could stay where we were living or we could move to a different town. And I chose to move to a different town. So everything was new. And it was a smaller town. It was like, I don't know, 5,000 maybe.
So how are you treated when you moved to that new town?
Well, I was the only one-legged girl in town, probably in the.
Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
It was kind of a bad thing because they didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to treat me. They didn't, and then I would go to school with my artificial leg on, and I tried that and it didn't work. And everybody was like, you need to be in a special school because they let you out early from class, 10 or 15 minutes, so that there were no support groups. There was nobody to go to. I didn't have any amputee friends.
So you had nobody to compare yourself to. You had nobody to talk to.
No.
And, we look today, there are so many groups, and I almost think there's so many groups that's created the division amongst people. Really what I want to do with Real, Raw, and Authentic is just bring people together and just know we are more alike than not. Mm-hmm. And we really just want the same things, no matter how many limbs or what our background, our history. I mean, all these groups are just segregating us into these little categories. And yes, I get support groups. That's one thing. But we need to integrate people into humanity now.
Yeah.
And the only way we're going to integrate people into humanity is by making people feel comfortable just as we are here today.
Well, I'll tell you, the little town I lived in, they are all like family to me. I was there for 37 years.
37 years. So why did you choose Texas?
Well, I had my amputation at Wilford Hall. And while I was there, my mother and I met a family from here in San Antonio. And so every time we would come for a hospital visit and I could get a pass, they would take us to their house.
Very cool.
So I've known this family ever since my amputation.
So as a young child, so they're kind of like a second family.
Yes.
Too. That's great.
And I finally had an opportunity to be able to come here. And they gave me the opportunity.
And so it was an opportunity, but your opportunity was against all the odds in most people's lives, because share with everybody what was going on in your life, because you have a son.
Yes.
You have a grandson.
Yes.
But what was going on with all of that?
Well, my son was in prison and my grandson was living with me. And we had come down here to visit that family. And we had talked about it for about 3 years. But I didn't want my son to be paroled back to Illinois.
Why is that?
It doesn't.
But it wasn't good for him.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't good for the family.
No, it wasn't good. No, it wasn't.
And it brought a lot of history and past, and you wanted to create from a place of nothingness.
Yes.
And so this was your opportunity to take a stand on your one leg for your family.
Yes.
To have a fresh start.
Yes.
And so you moved to San Antonio with your grandson. You met me, you met my family, and the rest is really history. And I told you a year ago when I started a podcast, I want to share your story because it's powerful. But your son was in prison. He's out. He's doing extremely well now.
Awesome.
And so I'm all about giving people second and third chances, but a lot of times it's the people who we hang around, and I get that. And I know you well. I know your son. I know your grandson. And, even your grandson has had even further issues in his life because what's happened to his mother.
Right. Yes.
What happened to her?
She committed suicide. She hung herself.
And on volume 3, we talked about suicide and how powerful that is, and it affects everybody.
Yes.
And it's the most selfish thing we can do. And if we do anything at Real, Raw, and Authentic, is we want to give people hope, because there's somebody listening right now that's not only an amputee, but that's all.
Oh, yes.
They're an amputee,
Oh, yes.
but you've been through addiction. You have your son that's paroled. You have a grandson who's lost his mother. I mean, you could be a hot mess right now. And here you are talking to me.
Well, because I tell people I could put myself in a closet and curl up in a ball and feel sorry for myself, but what good is that going to do? And I also learned that from my family and friends.
Well, and that's where I commend you once again. And that's another reason why I wanted you on this podcast, because I wanted to highlight a little bit about your history, who you are, bringing your family down here, fresh start. And you came down here, you're ready to start a fresh start. And then you start running into all these debacles because as a handicapped person, I don't know what's proper to say anymore. Is it handicapped, disabled? What do you prefer? I prefer to just call you Melissa.
Right.
I mean, that's really where we are. Let's start calling people by our names. And let's leave all the bullshit behind. Let's start just being real with people. And so, what I want to say is you moved down here and, you were living with a friend that's a mutual friend of mine, and that was great. But I've always encouraged you to get out on your own. You have your own family and you can do it. And as you started that process, one thing after another, and it's like you tried to get housing assistance as an amputee in the state of Texas. And what was that like for you?
Well, I applied, but then when COVID, I came in 2019. So when COVID hit in 2020, the list, it's not, you can't even see it. There is no list anymore for housing.
So there's no list. So
I don't know where I am.
Who's getting the housing then?
I don't know.
Good question, right? They might be trickling across the border. Who knows?
Right.
We don't really know, but you were very irritated because, and then you wanted to go get a job, but if you make more than so much money, they take away your disability. What is that feeling like?
Well, it's kind of scary because I get so much from disability, but then my rent takes $700 of my disability, so I have $300 left to live on. That's all. That's it. So if I don't have a job, I don't have any. I can't live on my own and be a productive
you're perfectly
person.
Normal, just like me.
Yes.
You just have one less leg.
Right.
How many jobs could you possibly do that you could have, make a lot of money, be a contributor to society, but you're being put down because of where you are? You try to make money, but if you want to make money, they're going to take the disability away. And then the cost of goods has gone up tremendously in the last year. And I know recently the government's going to take away your disability. So now you try to get food stamps. And what did they tell you when you tried to get food stamps?
That I made too much money.
What? Are you kidding me? This is why I started this podcast, Real, Raw, and Authentic. Do you know anybody in your life like Melissa that really isn't looking for a handout? She's simply looking for a hand up. She wants to work. She wants to contribute to society. She moved her family out of a toxic situation, brought her grandson down here. Now her son's down here. He has a great job. Your grandson's doing well for the first time. You have your own apartment for the first time, and you're ready to rock and roll in this world. And you got a good circle of friends and influence for the first time. What's holding you back?
Well, I'm just kind of I do have a job and I do get paid extra. That's why I don't get the food stamps, because I make too much money extra. Do
you know what's holding you back? Our system.
Yeah, it is.
Because
it's the system.
I know you very, very well. And I get when people play the system, and I get when people want to honor the system and do the right thing.
And
so my question to society is, how do you honor and do the right thing when you try to do what's right all the time, but the system is put in place to work against you? And that is what's happening in society, is because we always are going to have poor people in society, and we're always going to have wealthy.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to recreate the middle class.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and that's
we have
where you're
lost
trying
that.
to move your family from, is from poverty
Yes.
into middle class.
Yes.
And that's a struggle.
Very.
That shouldn't be a struggle for someone like yourself at all.
And what I mean, I'm not asking for a lifetime. I'm just asking for until I can get my life together here.
First of all, let me stop you. Your life is together. We need a system that's together to support people that are trying to work their way out of poverty,
Oh, yes.
get into middle class, and be sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
See,
Yes.
that's what welfare, that's what food stamps, that's
It's
what all that's for. It's temporary.
yes.
It's not for a lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
But see, what you're experiencing is creating a life cycle. And if you weren't willing to take a stand for your son and your grandson,
Mm-hmm.
what would that look like?
Nothing. It would look
And
like nothing.
So thank you for taking a stand for your family, because I'm going to take a stand for people like yourself, and I'm going to continue to build this podcast.
Good.
And I want to bring people on, and I want people to feel like I got a story to tell.
Mm-hmm.
Because your story is a great story, and
Thank
I
you,
commend
Chris.
you. And I know somebody out there right now is wanting to send some money and help you. And you know what? If that's what they want to do, great. Because you know what? I'm all about helping other people.
That
And
are helping themselves.
The best thing we can do to help people is help those that are helping themselves.
Yes.
And we got to get away from a system that's rigged against us and start doing things that are for people just like you and I. So Melissa, thank you for being on podcast number 4 with me.
Thank you,
I
Chris.
appreciate you, and thank you for being who you are in my life.
Well, I appreciate you for being who you are in my life.
Well,
Chris.
what we're going to do is we're going to teach people that we're more alike than not.
Mm-hmm.
And I just appreciate who you are and showing me that what amputee or not, you can do just as much as I can. So thank you for showing me that.
Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that.